And welcome students. As we continue work with our web pages, we're going to work on the larger of our web pages. So for this point, we have, of course, if you remember, structured quite a bit of our web page to date. We have the various different screen sizes that we've configured. We've done the smaller screens, we've done more of a tablet size and more of a medium size. Now, of course, there's our different sizes as we have spaced out right now. We have a couple things to kind of tidy up later on, but the big thing we want to focus on today is getting this view right here to kind of be tidied up, because this is the big one we want to focus on. Right? And of course we have also this large view here to kind of handle as well. Right, but let's focus on this one right here. All right, and this one should be when we get a much larger screen. All right, so this is doing max width of 1200. So I'm going to scale this back here just so we get our screen back. All right, and to start off, I'm just going to assume that we want to have something very similar to what we had before. All right, now with this one though, the big thing to remember is that we want to make sure that our width is kind of being maintained on that. So I'm going to actually just take this right here, bump something. Copy that whole thing. Come down here. Do the old paste operation. Give it save. Okay, so right now the min width 1200. So if we refresh, so there's a smaller one. And when we get larger, you can see it's still being maintained. All right, so that is great. The one thing we want to keep in mind, though, is when we look at our desktop view, you'll notice that we have the splash image to handle now. All right, because then we'll have our articles down here. So if we look at this right now, the navigation, it's fine for like some of these bigger things, but that splash image, we need to handle that at some point here. All right, because we want to kind of restrict that navigation. So we have our splash image and then the two articles. So let's go back to our code and look at the image. Now you can see the splash image right now. We have nothing set to really kind of control that splash image. All right. So as it stands right now, all right, when it's in the small view, we don't display the splash image. All right. And we can probably actually shut that off as well for the tablet mode, because we don't necessarily need it to be displayed in that smaller screen size. So I'm just going to set that splashed image to none. And then here, set the display, let's do to flex. Just to kind of start off here. Okay, and refresh. Let's go ahead and stretch it out. Okay, and you can see right now we have no splash image, even though we have set it here. It appears that this one right here is currently overriding that. Okay, and of course we have nothing up here to kind of dictate it otherwise. Okay, so let's go back here, refresh one more time, just make sure we have current code. Full screen it. Yeah, see, no image. So part of the issue is it could, of course, be masked, but more than likely we have to adjust this here. So let's just take this line of code out for a second here, since that's the one that caused the issue. Okay. Refresh. There it is. All right, so, okay, it's definitely there, and then it's not. So we have to obviously do a little bit of work with getting that image to show up where we want to. So I'm going to change into the display back. And let's go ahead and work on saying this. All right, so instead of flex, if we make that a block image, let's see if it will show up. Okay, so now there it is, and let's also add a float. Have it go to the right. Position. Okay, so there's the none there. Does that look good? All right, there it is. All right, so now though, you can see it's quite large. All right, and we could see that if we stretch this here too, only thing we see is this right now. All right. So if I make this position relative, okay, there he is down there. Refresh, there it is. All right, so we're still working good here. Now what we want to do, of course, is it has to float to the opposite side of the nav. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a max width, and I don't want it to take up more than, let's say, 70% of the web page. Oh, I put that on the navigation there. Put that on the splash image. And let's set the max width of the navigation. Let's do that to 25%. Now we want to leave a 5% buffer there, just so there's some room. Now you can see how those are now side by side. So there's my navigation, and there's my splash image. Now of course the splash image is still quite large in terms. So if I refresh, see it's all the way over here. So I've set max width to 70%. You can see there's still a scroll over here, a little bit. So we'll have to adjust some stuff here. So we got our max width 70%. So we're going to carry that down to this right here, max width, and we'll do 70%. Max width of the height, and we said 25%. Okay. Fresh, so that's correct. Now we want, of course, trim this up. Now the thing about this is that, remember, this is floating off of the right side. So if I change this to a float left, for example, you can see it brings it in a little bit and still kind of where we want, but we do of course have all this kind of dead empty space here. And if we look at the original image itself, so let me just look at that image. You can see on that image itself, you don't see it as well here, but in the thumbnail here, you can see there's a lot of white space here. So what we have to do is, there's two ways we could do this. We can edit this image and just simply crop out the white space, and then we wouldn't have to deal with all of that. Or of course we can do some stuff to restrict the height and width of the image. Okay. Now of course editing it, because it's a JPEG, it's really quick and easy to do. We could just simply just right click and choose edit, and we could just crop it out that way. The good thing about doing it that way is because we're cropping out just those pixels because they're never going to be used, it's less data to be loaded into the web page. Of course, we can also do it from the HTML side, and we can restrict the height and width of the image. But I'm just going to do a quick edit. So I'm just going to edit this, and let me just zoom this bugger out here. So I'm going to select, do a Control A, zoom out a little bit here, and you see I have all this white space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just make a selection, if I can grab it here, that is simply just going to be the figure in the middle. All right, now I can click on crop, I can click save. So now this image, you've noticed, has been updated, so it no longer have as much of that white space. You notice like the thumbs up logo didn't really have a lot of space around it, but the splash image did. So now that that's been edited, I can minimize this, refresh, and oh my goodness, look, he stretched out. He now looks like kind of like the Pillsbury Doughboy. All right, so it did help us solve the issue of white spacing, but the other issues that we run into now is that if you remember in our source code, we had defined a width and height into it. So really what I want to kind of do is go back to here. I'm going to remove that width and height out of here. And you can see it gets rid of the image. So easiest thing to do, let's delete it. Reinsert that image, because remember it's new dimension now. So I could of course just plug in the new dimensions I want it to be. So I'm going to just reinsert him. And you can see, remember he's bigger than what we originally had. So we had to, before, cut those in half. So this is 1025, so that's pretty much 1024. So that would be 512. 1896 or 1894. If you can't do that in your head, you can always just plug out a good calculator. Do 1894 divide by 2. You get 947. And there's our guy. Okay. Now, of course, we do have a different issue this time. You can see that the banner is now spilling down. Okay. So we want to make sure that the banner in this case, let me just refresh, is not bigger than the splash image. Now this of course could be solved by making, for example, this into a PNG, adding transparency, yada yada. So moral story, PNGs are better because you have transparency, so I wouldn't have to worry about this. But because I do have kind of this spillover effect here on the banner, I'm going to have to go up to the banner image here, okay, and I want to make sure that this banner here, and the whole div that's inside of it, doesn't really exceed that maximum height. So we're going to set a max height here. All right, and we're going to base it off the percentage of the web page. And let's just say, for our purposes, let's just start with 5%. Okay, refresh. Didn't really do anything. Then make it like 15. It shouldn't really do anything there. Now, if we do, let's just say pixels, let's say 500. Oops. Okay. One thing we might want to check out is what is the actual height of that image. The height is 599. That's the logo. Height is 125 on that banner image. Okay, so we know that if we go into our CSS for now, and even though saying pixels is not a good way to do this, but we say to that banner, set a max height of 100 pixels, you can see it drops it down, so now it fits inside that. So let's just go ahead and, if we go back to, let's say instead of pixels, let's use something like percentages. Let's say 2%. See, percentage is not really doing much here. 1%. We can try other measures like EM. Now EM, of course, you can see is a little bit better, and remember EM is better for responsive design. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to, let's do 5. And okay, it looks a lot closer to what I want. I'm going to go ahead and change it to 6. Almost there. 7. 7 looks golden. Now the one thing I'll have to make sure that, because the banner and logo are very much related, I want to make sure I put a max height on the logo as well. So I'm just going to do 7 EM on there as well. All right. Now, of course, that its own issues. You can see I pushed it up. So I want to maybe modify that. Let's just try regular height command. That changed as well. So I'm just going to leave that out there for now because it seems to be working just fine. All right. But now we have those images set up. So if I refresh this, boom, there's my banner. That looks golden. If I make this to a larger screen size, of course, now we have our own set of issues here, because you can see that now it's pushing out to this amount, because we have to deal with the larger screen size. But this screen size right here looks good. Now, of course, I can shrink down the height of this image. So if I wanted, so I could see the articles on that web page without having this giant splash image right here, I can do that. But I'm not worried about that right now. So we're going now to the larger web page. All right. So with this web page looks good. Go to, of course, we have a little bit of a jump right here, but we're going to focus right here. So this is where we're having issues. Okay. So now we, of course, have everything along the top here. So we have our header, which is display flex. We have logo, logo image, banner. Okay. So we're going to have to do some more modifications. All right, so I think that's a good spot to stop right there. So we are making great progress with our website. So at this point, we're going to stop, and when we come back next time, we will code up the larger screen size here in order to accommodate that portion of the web page.